We've had almost 2 years of social distancing and shutting down the vital components of what is at the heart of community, such as parks, trails, cafes, community centers, events, and social gatherings. As we look together as a nation to recover from the effects of the pandemic, we find ourselves at a unique crossroad in time. We are now faced with finding solutions to reconnecting our communities again. We recently brought together almost 500 people from across Canada to our online RECONNECT Making Communities Essential event. Over 2.5 days, we had a series of keynote presentations and masterclasses to discuss how we're going to rebuild social connection after the COVID pandemic. Thank you for joining me, Heather Keem from the Tamarack Institute, for one of 6 discussions that we've had about RECONNECT, making our communities essential. In this discussion, Kim Samuel talks about envisioning and building a world of belonging. In a time of COVID and climate emergency, we are spending most of our time responding to crises. Yet the work of repairing our world also requires that we envision a better future and create long-term strategies that are built on possibility and belonging. As a bonus, we've also shared comments and inspiration from participants to deepen the conversation.
Community is everywhere. During the COVID-19 pandemic, it has been community that has cultivated resilience, sparked compassion, and ultimately supported survival. As we navigate the 4th wave, however, we must build upon the foundation of community that already exists and go further in imagining our collective future. And so I want to begin our time together today by asking you to do something that might seem bold, even revolutionary, for the times in which we're living. I want you to take a moment to imagine that we are headed toward a future that is better than the present. Let's really imagine it. I want you to take a deep breath. Picture the place where you live and imagine that 10 years have passed and people are healthier, happier, and more connected. Imagine there's more understanding and respect, and the land feels healthier and more nourished. Now take a moment to consider what changes today could make this a more positive future a reality. What are the biggest and most important shifts that we might make right now to help us move from here to there? I believe that imagination is a prerequisite for progress. We need the capacity to picture a better future in order to summon the creativity and energy to cultivate it.
Participant reflection. Acceptance of all as equals is what I see as the prerequisite to move forward to a better world.
Yet the problem is that imagination is sometimes the first casualty of a crisis. In a time of COVID and climate emergency and extreme polarization, most of us are spending most of our time playing defense. We're seeking to manage the dilemma du jour, and we are understandably lowering our expectations for the future in order to guard our hearts from disappointment. Still, we need imagination, especially now. The most important developments in history, from democracy and civil rights to the modern social safety net and universal education, were seeded through imagination before they came to be cultivated through strategy and struggle. Imagination isn't just a source of hope, it's a source of resilience. There's a certain special quality to social action when it's born of a positive vision. When we imagine a better future, we are called to look beyond disciplinary boundaries and jurisdictional boxes to imagine new causal connections. There's an added dimension of creativity and of care. I'm going to give you a few examples. First, in 1987, a group of doctors, scholars, and activists, including Paul Farmer, Ophelia Dahl, and Jim Young Kim, founded Partners in Health, PIH for short, on the basis of vision, a future in which all people enjoy the right to health. While this might seem utopian, PIH has worked with extraordinary rigor over more than 30 years, now in more than a dozen countries, to move the vision from the realm of imagination into reality. Part of what PIH imagined was the paradigm of accompaniment. It's a model that's distinct from ordinary charity or the simple provision of services in time of need. It means investing in a long-term relationship grounded in listening and a commitment to addressing the structural barriers to wellness facing a community. The paradigm that they imagined, accompaniment, is about empowering local people to be the resilient guardians of their own community's health. To realize the vision today, PIH trains local people as community health workers who walk with their fellow community members on a path to good health. The community health workers conduct home visits, teach preventative healthcare skills, make case findings for medical providers, and keep track of people with specific needs, including children under 5, pregnant women, orphans, and people with intellectual disabilities. During the time of COVID-19, they've served as community contact tracers and offered testing as well as access to vaccines in resource-poor settings. I've had the good fortune to collaborate with PIH in various ways over the years. And some years ago, I was present for the opening of a hospital in Butaro, Rwanda, including a state-of-the-art cancer center. I remember how their holistic vision of the right to health, born of imagination, informed everything. The chairs for IV treatment were arranged around central pods so that patients receiving treatments could stay connected with one another and the medical staff in a feeling of camaraderie and solidarity. Each patient had immediate access outside to the beautiful landscape of the Virunga Mountain through a pivot door. I met community health workers serving the hospital who saw their mission as addressing the root causes of ill health by linking people not only to medicine and care, but also to assistance with food, water, education, housing, transportation, and employment.
Participant reflection. I wish everyone had a shared understanding and belief that we don't all have to conform and agree to be friends and to share time together. That living alongside each other, spending time together, and enjoying each other in all our individuality and diversity does not require that I change who I am or you change who you are. And all that is required is to value, respect, and care about each other, regardless of our differences.
So this is an example of what it looks like when social action is grounded in something deeper than emergency response. This is what it looks like when skillful action is connected to the vivid product of vision, or shall we call it positive imagination. Sometimes this kind of visionary action arises out of times of emergency. I think of how the crisis of COVID-19 has, for example, given rise to the mutual aid movement. My next example. In Toronto, in the weeks after the World Health Organization declared a pandemic, a small group of activists got on a social media site and decided to build positive future movement on and through a clever play on words. Rather than scaremongering, they wondered, how can we engage in caremongering? I like that. By dropping that single letter from the word, they imagined what it would mean to turn the situation from a frightening and disorienting emergency into a chance to remake the political and economic paradigm, a chance to weave a new and more humane social fabric. Using online platforms, the Toronto caremongers started responding to the pandemic by coordinating the distribution of food and personal protective equipment, PPE, gathering small regular donations for newly unemployed workers and their families, and helping to run errands for people who were unable to leave the house, including especially older people and people with compromised immunity. Similar mutual aid societies have now sprung up around the world. Of course, mutual aid is not a fundamentally new way of organizing society. Cultures around the world have been structured this way in an ethos of reciprocity and care since time immemorial. But for the age in which we're living, this vision of mutual aid is a radical break. It's a product of bold reimagination of what's possible. When I take a deep breath and imagine a better future, I see people experiencing a rich and glowing belonging. I imagine people experience the sense of being at home, on the land, in community, and even in the economy. I imagine that every person has a valued and respected role to play, and the system as a whole supports each role. I believe that all human beings, by simple virtue of the fact that they were born, have an inherent right to belong. Yet I also know that this right isn't so often realized in practice in our world today. So I try to make my imagination an intentional practice in all of my work. I do my best to stop and breathe deeply and imagine a future in which this right is a universal reality. This practice is a source of inspiration and energy in my life and work. And lately, I've been contemplating how we can restore our capacity for imagination, especially in times of struggle, doubt, and urgency.
Participant reflection. Kim's presentation resonates with my experience in Asia and in Africa. I have worked on person-led and patient-centered care in public health. Experiential knowledge of communities is as important as medical advice. When we communities take ownership of their health, we find better health outcomes. As response to COVID-19, we built the capacities of communities on home-based care so that we could reduce cases of hospital admissions.
So I'm going to summarize 4 ideas for how we can do so, which is also to say that collectively, for how many people are here, about 500, there's probably 500 times 4 to start with that you'll come up with as well. The first is take time for quiet reflection. We're sometimes trained to think of rest and downtime as a luxury, yet it's not. It's essential for clear perceiving. And clear perceiving is one of the most vital acts of service to our world. When we're caught in the noise and the urgency of modern life, especially in times of the pandemic, it's hard to exit survival mode and see the bigger possibilities. When we get beyond this distraction and the urgency, it's possible to tune in to genuine intuition. And this is where we find the power to imagine. So take time to be in nature, to be in quiet, or to simply tune into your breath. Find your positive vision from a place of calm. The second is simply listen. The power of the mutual aid societies is that they're grounded in values of respect and reciprocity. The idea isn't simply to do what the recognized experts define as best, but to pay attention to the genuine needs of the people facing the greatest challenges. Listening means being open to unexpected perspectives and possibilities. Listening is essential to tapping into the collective imagination rather than just clinging to a solitary view of how things ought to be. So to strengthen genuine imagination, get into conversations with people you might not ordinarily talk to. Set up systems to harness unheard or underrepresented perspectives in your team or organization. Get to know the people most directly impacted by programs and policies. Find ways to amplify their voices. 3, bridge imagination and strategy. When Partners in Health launched more than 30 years ago, the notion of a right to health seemed to most people like idealism. But the PIH team focused on directly bridging the vision to strategy and even smallest tactics of the work. That's how they developed the model of accompaniment. The vision informed a set of values, which in turn set the tone and ethos for all of their work. So as you imagine a better future, think clearly about what actions can take us from here to there. Be rigorous in considering alternative scenarios and how you can be most creative in helping to generate a positive future. Don't be afraid to be experimental, testing ideas and iterating to make them better over time. And fourth, have the courage to hope. It's understandable that hope is out of fashion. Just look at the social isolation wrought by the pandemic, the food insecurity, the uncertainty about livelihoods, the wildfires and storms and droughts driven by the climate crisis. Yet, we have to remember that the failure to hope consigns us unfulfilled possibilities. The only way to create a better world is to know what we want and to believe that it's attainable. So even in times of crisis, especially in times of crisis, when it's not easy to see an obvious way forward, keep a practice of gratitude and positivity. In closing, I invite you to take a moment for another deep breath. I know I'll be having one myself in a few seconds. Return to however you picture a better future. Consider the possibility that this simple act of imaginating is, in fact, a vital way of serving our world. Thank you.
We believe that deepening community is the answer. Reconnecting our communities so that they are strong and resilient is so vital to addressing any community crisis or problem. Cities Deepening Community supports community changemakers to use asset-based community development with collective impact to build neighborhood strategies. We help cities, community groups, and organizations to build their knowledge and skills to put residents at the center of developing a neighborhood strategy. Join us in the movement to deepen community. Learn more at our website at www.tamarackcommunity.ca/Cities Deepening Community. And don't forget to listen to the other 5 discussions on RECONNECT, making your communities essential.